Hello and welcome to a little tutorial in which I'll talk about how I organize and back up my photos, which I think is a very important topic. So let's start right away with my folder structure, because I think it's important to keep a good overview about your photos, and we're here in Lightroom and I want to quickly go through how I organize my photos in a folder structure and also how I do the import of the photos, how I make sure I find my photos and stuff like how I save my photos. So let's start right away and just look at here this main pictures folder, where you see I have the folders from 2012 to 2019 here, which actually isn't all the photos I have. I also have 2009 to 2011, but those are only on my backup. So here, those photos showing up are all on my main hard drive or on a dedicated hard drive in my PC. Yeah, let's just look into one of those, 2019 for example. So you see here I have another set of folders, and I basically grouped the photos into the locations or into the travels. For example, here you see Morocco, you have Colombia, photos from Germany, the Alps. This gives me a quick overview, and I seldom have more than 10 folders or subfolders here. Within those, I always have 2 folders at least. So let's look at Morocco. You see here I have the RAW folder, which basically contains all the raw photos. So when I import my photos, I import them into this raw folder as DNG. And then we have the master folder, which contains the PSD files which I was working on. Those files are the final photos from which I basically create all the different distributions, for example for web, for the agencies, for print. And those PSD files are all 16-bit in the format Pro Photo, and they contain 2 layers each. One layer is the starting material, or basically the blended focus stacked layer, and then I have the final photo, which is on a separate layer, and this contains all the adjustments. And I don't keep any adjustment layers in between, because this would blow up the file size and I rarely want to do such changes. I have a separate video about how I can still use those 2 layers to do some slight changes to an image, about why I do it that way, the benefits and the drawbacks kind of. So I'll link this below, and also you'll see something, a little eye popping up now here in the video. So you can watch this video where I talk about it. But yeah, you see here all the master files. Yeah, basically that's how I organize, or how I do the main organization of my photos. But this is still not enough if I need to find some specific photo or some specific theme. For 10 years I usually can remember roughly where I would have taken specific photos, but another important step is basically the import. So when I import photos, let's just open up the import dialog. What I do, so I come back from travels and I want to import my photos. I go here into the metadata and I edit presets. So I have one main preset, which normally it's landscape. And one important thing here, it has all my copyright information. This is always the same. But then based on the travels I'm doing, I change the headline, the category, other categories. I go here into the EPTC image, change the genre, the location, stuff like that. I also go down here into the keywords and leave some meaningful keywords. And when I come back, for example, I came back from Colombia, I had like 2000 photos, and I don't just import all those photos in one rush. I basically import it in stages. So for example, for the sublocations, I was at the Pacific Coast. So I first select only those photos from Pacific Coast, adjust those keywords to include, for example, Pacific Coast, Nuki, El Cantil, so some specific keywords, as well as the general keywords for Colombia and stuff. Then I import those. Then I move on to, for example, it was Santa Marta. Then I would remove the Pacific Coast and put in Santa Marta and some more location details, and also import, and then go on. So maybe 4 or 5 imports per travel. And this way I have the ability to distinguish or search a little more precisely. If I wanted to, I could even go in after the fact and edit the keywords, but I usually try to do it here during the import, and then I'm done and can later use the Lightroom catalog to search for specific keywords or genres or whatever I have in those meta tags. So now you've seen my main folders with all the raw files and the master files, but I also have this folder down here which is called distribution, and if we open this up you see I have different distribution forms. Calendar, so from time to time I do calendar. I have contests, so if I take part in photo contests, you see for all the years, and also for the last years I don't do contests anymore. Then I have publications for all the years, and I would have subfolders there for all the publications. I have web and I have shop, and basically in shop here are the distributions for my agencies, so gallery stock, Huber, then print shop, so I have photos for example at Redbubble, those go there. And yeah, what goes there actually for the agencies, it would be 8-bit TIFF files, full resolution. Here for the print shop it's mostly JPEG, sRGB, and then some special sales. If I sell print licenses, then I group them there with the size I basically sold, and yeah, I keep this organized. So this here is basically the output from the master files. One more important thing here, I need to know what files are in which distributions, but I don't want to always browse here this folder structure. For this I have an Excel sheet, and in this I have all the photos which are in any of the agencies or print shops, which you see up here, Getty, Gallery Stock, and so on. And I mark it in which agency I have a photo. I have here the date, the location, I have the image title. Let's maybe increase the size here a bit so you better see. So I have the location where the file is stored, and then where I have this file. And that's very important to get this overview, because sometimes I get requests for licenses for specific images, and I always need to check if this is an agency, because I have those images exclusively at the agency, and I either need to ask them if there's currently a license out, or sometimes I have to do this sale via the agency because it's in the contract. Also, I have to avoid having photos in two different agencies because of the exclusivity. And without such a database or file, however you do it, it's nearly impossible to keep track of all the photos. That's an important part of my photo organization too. And yeah, if you're working with agencies and have your photos in different print shops, whatever, I'd suggest you always keep some kind of a database or file, or just do it simply with an Excel sheet here. Now let's get to the next point, which is the kind of, I call it folder grooming or something. You go through the files and delete stuff you know you won't ever process or post. And it's usually hard to do this right away when you're coming back from a trip. So you go through the files, I do this, and just delete all the junk. So the photos which are maybe out of focus, which you know right away you don't need, but you'll usually end up with many photos where you think, I might maybe process them later. What I usually do, I go back a few years. So for example, I would now go through the folder 2016 and delete the ones, or mark the ones which I now know I'll no longer process. And it's much easier if you go through photos which you've taken a few years ago, because by now you maybe have better photos which have similar content, and yet it's easier to go quickly through them. And let's just go to Colombia and I show you what I usually do. So I would go through the raw files, give the ones I instantly know I'll never process 1 star. And I don't spend much time on each photo. If I need to spend much time, if I need to think about, do I want to process it later or so, I'll leave it. But there are many photos, usually if you go through them a few years later, where you instantly know I never process it. So they quickly get 1 star and I go on. And at the end, I just filter for those 1 star images. Let's remove it quickly, because with this image I'm actually not sure yet, and it's also just from 2019. But for the older photos, I just go through it. For 2016 I take maybe an hour, go through it, and out of those 6,800 photos I delete 1,000 or 2,000 photos. And yeah, actually I should do this soon. And you see here for those older photos, I just have like 2,099 here. 2014 has a little more. 2015, 1,736 photos. Actually, I've taken at least 3 times that many photos. So here I already did some cleanup, and I'll go through it again, which usually takes out a few more photos. And this way I keep the size of the hard drive I need for my photos low. All my photos with all the master files, for example, it's less than 2 terabytes. I think it's 1.6, which is quite good for more than 10 years. I hope you're still with me, because now comes a very important topic, which is backup. I actually recorded a video about photo backup during travel last year, which I'll also link beneath this video. And yeah, now I want to talk about how I back up all the other photos. So basically what you've just seen, this complete folder structure. And I have an article on my blog already, which is from 2014, where I roughly outline this. But yeah, I want to go through it. So the main thing is I have here at home, I have an external backup solution, which is basically a RAID system where I mirror my files. So I have 2 drives in this RAID system, which is basically used for backup, and then it mirrors the files. And how do I sync it? There's a nice tool which is called Free File Sync. And I use this, it's very simple. You see the user interface here. So on the left, I have all the folders which are on the P drive, so which I just showed you. And here on the right, that's the external drive. And I want to sync those folders. I basically go to compare here. And then this gives me an overview of all the images. And now it just contains files which need to be updated. But it could also, if I, for example, go through the grooming process and delete files, it would also show them here. So basically you would see this little trash bin symbol. So this would be, or this would mean that this file is just left here on the right side and would be deleted. Those files you see here are basically just here on the left side and not on the right side and need to be pushed over. So yeah, long story short, if I now click on sync, this will eventually lead to having all the files on the backup drive in the same structure as on my main drive here. So it will be completely synced. So if I delete files, they're also gone from the backup afterwards. Yeah, having a backup just at home, this doesn't cut it, because in the event of fire or something, all your files will still be gone despite the backup. So that's why I do some kind of backup rotation. And yeah, this basically means that I have some external hard drives. One is at my office, so a separate location, and I bring them in from time to time. For example, on Monday, I bring in one drive and I do the same process. I sync it as I showed you with Free File Sync. And then on Wednesday, I bring in another drive. And this way, there's never all my drives here at home. I always have one drive in another location, which is very important. Also, this rotation, or how I call it, backup rotation, gives me some more time. For example, if I sync something, so if I would say I delete some file and I realize a few days later I shouldn't have done it, it was a mistake, then I still have it maybe on one of the other backups. Only if I have rotated through all the backups, then the file's really gone. And actually, at one time this was happening. I accidentally deleted some video files from a Mavic, from my travels, and I realized it just the other day. But then as I brought in the other backup from my office, I could still restore it. So this gives me a little bit more time, and for me that's a very good solution. I'm actually thinking about extending this backup even a bit further and put the distribution files somewhere into a online folder, online store, which is just not practical for me to do it for all the files, because the internet I have here is just not fast enough, and also it would be too expensive. But just the final files, I could totally manage to do that, and maybe I'll do so in the future. I hope you found this video interesting. If you made it till here and liked it, please leave a thumbs up, and yeah, see you soon. Bye.